let's say, prospering industry than an industry which is going down. But also, of course, in your personal development, in your salary, and also, of course, in the joy that you have in the daily work. Yeah, so for this SAP or the SAP area is definitely a good place to be, not only now, but also in the foreseeable future. Okay, maybe even we in our sales organization, we overcorrected a bit. We went too far in the last years into bringing up young people who are coming from the academy, who are able to talk wonderfully about what the systems are able to do, but have absolutely no connection in the end to the customer.
Welcome back to Bite Size. I am Kyler Cheatham, your host on the podcast where we dissect all things ERP, SAP strategy in 10 minutes or less. So I'm very excited to welcome Alexander Greb, our next guest. And he's going to talk to us a little bit about how do we leverage our SAP consultant journey, not only to continue to progress in the industry, but also as technology evolves, how do we evolve as consultants to best meet our clients' needs? So Alexander, thank you so much for joining me today. It's an absolute honor to have you. Could you introduce yourself to our audience, kind of talk about where you're at currently, and then we'll kind of dig into your journey specifically?
Thank you very much, and great for that you have me. It's really a pleasure. Yeah, Alexander Greb, my name. I'm Vice President for Digital Transformation at Westernacher, which is probably to explain that I'm responsible with my team that we enable customers who go with us into SAP implementation projects to be able to do things they were not able to do before, which is, in my opinion, the easiest definition of what digital transformation actually is. My journey was, to be honest, I did come to the SAP world by accident a little bit. It was not on purpose. I never said I want to become an SAP guy. Maybe also in that area, I'm a little bit of a late bloomer because I'm not coming from that typical SAP techie area, but I'm coming more from the process side. I started after university, work or life as a consultant, but as a more process and strategic consultant in the SCM region. So we did some production optimizations back then, stuff like that. And then in 2009, I was then asked by a former boss of mine if I would like to join SAP, which at that moment sounded to me like a good idea because it was a financial crisis. And I was at a quite small company back then. And it wasn't really clear how this small company will get out of the crisis. So it sounded like a good idea to join a little bit of a bigger boat in those times of crisis. And that's how I came to SAP. And I was also in the beginning program and project manager. We did some automotive stuff back then. And I was then asked in 2014, 2015 if I wanted to do something new, which was for the first time implementing HANA and then S/4HANA at a large enterprise customer, which suddenly boosted me into this kind of new world. And it was quite interesting because back then, like it's often the case when companies, and SAP was no different, do these kinds of new things like new technologies, new markets, and so on, new industries. They of course are a little bit in a try and error moment, and so it was a completely different thing. We had lots of discussions with Hasso back then and with the board, how these kinds of, let's say, go-to-market goes, how it works out with the customer. And I was then asked to, and that was basically my real journey start to help building up the customer advisory for S/4HANA in MEE, because me and my team, we were one of those few back then who knew what works and what does not work in the area of S4, which carried me then for the next years.
Right.
I also built up back then the SAP Experts podcast, which I think made me a little bit prominent in that area. And since 3 years now, I'm at Westernacher, again a little bit closer to the customer and responsible for making things run and making customers fitter and better than before.
Yeah. I think what's interesting about your journey is you've been on the SAP side of the business as well as the advisory side, but you've always kind of had this customer enhancement role, as I understand it. Is that correct?
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
I think that's something that's really unique within the SAP space, is really having that dedication to the customer. SAP isn't always known for that, as a lot of times
Yeah.
their advisory service is, so I think that there's a balance between those two conversations. So there's one thing I want to dig into as far as your answer there. You said you started as a kind of a process guy. Do you feel like understanding businesses' processes has really helped you better understand the technology and the needs of the business?
Absolutely. Because if we simplify it a little bit, when you, for example, when you are to make technology happen at the customer, you have these kind of three areas: the why, what, and how. And the what, for example, in that kind of process, this is something where SAP feels themselves responsible most, which is knowing everything about the software, the features and functions, and so on, what the capability, what the technology is capable of, and so on and so on. But there are two more things to that, which is at first the why, to make the case for the customers, because that's one of the biggest issues we still have, and which is also the reason why the kind of adoption, for example, for S4HANA is lacking behind the goals that we all have, because 2027, the ECC maintenance is running out. And the reason why that doesn't really happen is customers are not really sure about the why. Yeah, there are reasons. So much for that. But we, and I mean like SAP, we in the ecosystem and so on, are obviously not excellent in every area to explain the why to our customer, to build these kind of individual cases. There are right ways to do that, which work out very, very well, but unfortunately they are not really used by everybody. And there are ways which are a little bit more conservative, which may seem a little bit like a shortcut, which are quite often carried out by SAP, to be honest, and which not really help in these kinds of cases. So that's the one thing. And the third thing is the how, which means, how do we actually are leveraging the benefits and so on, or making benefits happening. And that's also a part where we are not always excelling in the ecosystem, to be honest. Because how many legacy processes survive even in S4HANA implementations? How many customers continue to work like they did before and like they started maybe 25 years ago when they did ECC? So to come from that process strategy, customer side, and so on, not just the bubble that every tech company is, really helps to translate in the end customer challenges via capabilities into features and functions in the end, and to provide then customers with architectures that deliver the benefits. So I think it's crucial to have all these kinds of aspects. And when you say like this is not really often happening, then probably I have a competitive advantage by that.
Yeah, I would completely agree. You have a competitive advantage in that. And I have an agenda for that question. So put a pin in it until we talk a little bit about how do we advance SAP consulting career, which we'll do later in the episode. So definitely stay tuned. And just turning to the audience for a minute, I'd love to hear from you guys about your thoughts on needing business process experience for SAP implementations. On a scale of 1 to 10, you can drop 1 through 10 in the comments. How important do you think that fact is? Spoiler alert, it's probably 10. But
sorry, yes,
right. you got
couldn't keep by myself
there. So before we kind of go into that, I always have to like stop myself because I'm so excited to get to the tactics and kind of pull out what can we do today. But I think it's really important to talk about, can you give us some kind of pros and cons of being an SAP consultant or being in the SAP world?
To be honest, I just know pros.
Good.
And I'm not saying this because I'm in the marketing mood at the moment, but I think, and this is important, and that's what I learned, it's always good for yourself if you are part of an industry or if you work in industry which is on the way up. Because it's innovative, the market is growing and so on, because it has a lot of effects on not only on your career, which is much easier to advance in, let's say, prospering industry than an industry which is going down. But also, of course, in your personal development, in your salary, and also, of course, in the joy that you have in your daily work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for this SAP or the SAP area is definitely a good place to be, not only now, but also in the foreseeable future. And I think we definitely are also well equipped that, let's say, what we are doing is not going out of fashion in any way within the next years, but the topics will rise. We talked about the customers we have to bring from ECC to to S/4HANA. There's a lot of bunch of work waiting for us, and as such, I'm happy for anybody who decides to join us and to help us out in that kind of undertaking.
So, to kind of dig into that answer, a question I get a lot in the industry is, should I focus on one system like SAP with my career, or should I be more agnostic so I can go in and advise for any system? What would your answer be to that question, and why?
Well, let's say there are certain flavors definitely in the work. You got the specialists, and those specialists are very important, yeah, because you have to dig down definitely. Then, of course, you have in the classic way, the architect, which are a little bit more generalistic in their approach because they can connect to the customer much better. So these are let's say, the two different dimensions. Most jobs in the consultant world are divided to. Now, with the advent of the cloud and with the shifting of the approach we take from, let's say, more waterfall style, customer tell us what you want and we do this for you, to a more sub-activate fit to standard, which is completely different, yeah, because you are now not the one who is going to the customer and asking for requirements and then more or less executing them, but you now have to be a consultant even more like before. Yeah, not just an executor of a technical service, but a consultant who is coming to the customer with a clear idea on how the industry is excelling, with the experience on how other companies are excelling in that area, how the best practices are, and guiding the customer through that fit to standard. And now, of course, you need consultants, of course, who are able to do that, not only just from a competence area, but also, of course, from a personality area. So if you are a very shy person and so on, or very introverted, of course, that may be something which may be a little bit of a disadvantage in some fit to standards discussion, where you are really doing sparring and sometimes, of course, have to challenge the customer also concerning his legacy processes, if they are still relevant today, and so on. So definitely, I think we have become in the last years a little bit more, like I said, from consultants, we have developed a little bit more into executors of a technical service, but we have to go back now again, being actual consultants. And I think this, if you are now looking into what's relevant in the future, definitely to have industry competence, definitely to be fit in, let's say, best practices and the ability to guide customers strategically forward.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good point of that evolution from technical resource to business advisor has been really a critical piece. And maybe you're not the most extroverted person. A lot of times, stereotypically in our industry, we don't always attract the most extroverts. We're kind of more IT in the basement type of people, right? But having that ability to be able to gain and garner trust, you're going to be able to create the most impact, right, with your clients. So I think that's a really good piece of advice. And we'll kind of dig in future episodes of Bite Size about things like communication skills and how you can really garner those from a baseline, because those should be exercised just like a muscle, to be able to have your clients say, oh, maybe they do have a good point as they pry my spreadsheet out of my hand, right?
Yeah.
You need to be able to do a little Jedi mind tricking in order to get the client to really understand that you're there to help and support. So I think that's a great piece of advice. So Alexander, let's get into the good stuff of where we're at as far as SAP and kind of the state of the industry. We know we're kind of in an unprecedented time with a few deadlines looming depending on what type of SAP system you're running, really with 2027 being the end of the end of support for ECC and kind of that push to S/4HANA migrations. So for consultants, there is this high demand in the marketplace. So from your perspective, how can SAP community consultants really leverage this momentum in the marketplace?
Do you mean a question in the way of how they can make the most out of it for themselves in that area?
I would say so. Yeah. Like, how
Okay.
can they, I'm always going to say, how are we doing the right thing for the client? But this is
Yeah,
a time in which you should really be putting on your business hat and say, how am I going to make
exactly.
money? This is a really good time to focus on that.
Absolutely. To be honest, of course, in ice hockey, this is kind of saying you should not try to go there where the puck is, but where the puck is going to be. Which of course means that you are not chasing technologies, but you try to be there when the technology really is coming to bloom, which means that I definitely would for sure not go into ECC now and try to be there. Definitely in the latest technology, which is at the moment definitely S/4HANA in a cloud implementation. What definitely concerning the aspects very much makes sense to also get knowledge in the SAP Signavio and LeanIX area, because this is all about the architecture. This is all about optimizing the kind of processes that you are working with that. And SAP Signavio and LeanIX is becoming the new standard in that area. But also for a role, what I really experience in the last half year, especially those people who will become in high demand and probably at the moment do not realize yet how much money they can make in a few years, are the enterprise architects. Yeah, those basically who are able to translate customer challenges into capabilities and into architectures which solve it and which guide this kind of process and support companies with that. Because SAP themselves, I had several workshops where I was asked to bring my outside in perspective into that to SAP, where they realized, okay, maybe even we in our sales organizations, we overcorrected a bit. We went too far in the last years into bringing up young people who are coming from the academy, who are able to talk wonderfully about what the systems are able to do, but have absolutely no connection in the end to the customer. You now really need those people anymore that you in the last years maybe a little bit pushed away, because you thought those would be, let's say, the old white people, like said, not because of the skin, but because of the saying. Where you said like, okay, we want to push them out because we need now the new fresh people. Now everybody comes back and say like, okay, we need these kind of competences anymore. Where you understand the business of the customer, where you can relate in your head the situation of the customer, the former experience you made with other customers in these situations, and you can connect this to the latest technologies. And by this, like a personal trainer who is giving a running shoe to somebody who wants to be more performant, is able not just to put the shoe on this guy, but also helps him to train his stamina and his capabilities there. And that's exactly what we have to see. Those technologies, they're just like a running shoe. Not everybody will be a Usain Bolt just by buying a running shoe and by pulling this on. But it's our task at least to enable them to be more fit, to be more flexible, to be more resilient. And this is the job what I think in the next years, especially in our times where everything is about disruption and new crazy things happen each year, is as relevant as ever.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think those specific areas I really want to dig into when you talk about things like enterprise architects or Signavio and really focusing on those different things. Are those some areas of focus? And maybe you can kind of add to that list for when we talk about freshies, right, in the industry that are really trying to break in to that consultant SAP network, which can be hard to do. Because a lot of times in my experience, when we have an SAP consultant, they have a bench, right? They have people they call for data. They have people they call for specific integrations that they may need, and a lot of times it can be hard to break onto that bench and, start to get on these calls. And I can always advise on the social selling side, like, how do you create a brand around your consultancy to support your overall ROI? But I'm wondering from you, what can they do as far as skill set to be able to break into the industry?
If you, for example, are a student at university, I think that's already the best way to start. I did not start back then at that age, but if you want to be in this kind of career, now, by the way, when I was a student, SAP was a completely different thing. Like now, by far not as, let's say, sexy as it is now, but it was.
We're bringing sexy.
Yeah, everybody back then. Yeah, exactly. Back then, everybody wanted to be in the industry, like in the automotive industry and so on. That's where everybody was pushing to, not really technology or SAP or something like this. But if you, of course, want to get your feet into that business, for example, we have now employed a young woman from Germany who is brilliant. She's at the moment finishing her university, and the last years she already had her internships. She had her working student jobs at different areas in different companies, worked with SAP solutions, knows the community already. Yeah, because already when she was a student, she decided not only to enroll in, let's say, some university courses, but look what does SAP has to offer for me. Yeah, let's say these kind of learning journeys or events, where also students are welcome. From solution management and so on. So she already starts at the moment with, let's say, highly revving, to call it like this. Yeah, she has already a lot of traction, a lot of speed. So I think this is something which I can advise everybody to do. So be early on that boat and be curious. Look around what those companies already offer at the moment, and especially what we see now, for example, the area of SAP Signavio, for us as a consulting company, offers a lot of, let's say, possibilities for young students to get, also without having in-deep SAP knowledge yet, first steps in there. Because when they then start as interns or as working students, work in, let's say, their first small projects with SAP Signavio, they get the process knowledge, they get the understanding of the mechanics between processes on the one side and system capabilities on the other side, and so on. And I think this is a fantastic school to start with. And so if somebody says like, what I'm maybe starting my major years, I really now want to do my first steps until the end of my studies, do something like this.
Yeah, and I love that a lot of universities and, bigger higher institutions, even here in the States and globally, have started to offer those certificate programs so that you can get certified in some data analytics. You can get certified in Signavio, in CRM systems. So really looking at what can I get as far as these certifications to make me more marketable in that space. I believe, and you may know better than me, Alexander, but SAP also has a pretty sophisticated SAP University program that has like a training program. So I think integrating into that is always important as well. And knowing that you're going to a vendor training program, just as you would go to Google.
Exactly.
It is biased, right? But we know that it still will teach you a lot of that subject matter expert. And I think one question I want to ask you, you have a very big network. You're very well known, kind of in the space. I think when we first talked, I was like, some people have Taylor Swift and some people have Alexander Greb. And I, made you wildly uncomfortable with that statement, but it is true. You do have a significant network and a significant following. How important is that to kind of gain and start to ask those questions in a digital platform like LinkedIn to kind of understand what that network can look like as far as consulting connections?
Well, this is a wide topic, because to be honest, when I started with LinkedIn a few years ago, I did for the first years almost nothing. Yeah, because I for myself did not really see so much the value. It was like a boring version of Facebook, to be honest, in that way. And in a certain way, LinkedIn still probably is the most serious place on earth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which is if you look into many posts who are there who are almost close to comedy, so
Yeah.
serious they are, and so serious people are in what they are doing there. That's because that's a few years back. I of course understood that it does not only or it's not only enough to good do things and to do good things and to do great work and great projects and so on, but you of course have to talk about this
Mm-hmm.
also. And I always had my joy in, of course, education, in evangelizing people, or to talk about things that I saw that are going maybe a little bit into the wrong direction
Mm-hmm.
or are done wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I thought, I know maybe some better ways to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I want others to participate with the knowledge
Right.
and with that experience. That's why I started first with the podcast, and then, of course, with LinkedIn. Yeah, that I try, of course, to bring my topics into the air.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, of course, it's easy for me because I have collected in 20 years a certain level of experience and so on, which of course is a little bit much for or to expect from younger people, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do that. But already at that moment, I think everybody can contribute to that kind of um, let's say evangelization by sharing not only just, and this is how LinkedIn, in my opinion, unfortunately is used most of the times to repeat all the time marketing slogans, bumper stickers, to feed stuff into that.
Mm-hmm.
The social um, the social marketing departments in their own company did.
Yeah.
And for me as a user, this is absolutely awful when
Yeah.
you then have your timeline with 7 people sharing the same stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure if that really helps anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or
It
if
does.
even the companies do profit from that. Yeah. Because you just get annoyed. And then of course is people are taking themselves so effing
Yeah.
seriously.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Which is not really, yeah, that's why I try to bring
Yeah.
some humor into it and
Some
be at
fun.
least a little bit of entertaining to see that if you over serious everything, yeah, you do not really go
Mm-hmm.
to the your personal goal in the end. So if I may have some recommendations, is at first, please do not take this too serious. Yeah, definitely, is this a self branding what you do there? But if you are appearing to people as a little bit overconfident
Mm-hmm.
in your way, yeah, which when you look at as a more experienced person, then just looks ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a huge disadvantage, and it may be the exact opposite of what you want to make out of that. So tone it a little bit down. Do not make something of an business Instagram out of it. Maybe do not do to every post that you do a selfie, stick a selfie of you
Mm-hmm.
into it. Of course, I also do that sometimes, but sometimes there are these kinds of posts there where you're saying like, okay, why does this face now with somebody in a very big thinking pose?
Yeah.
How does this correspond then to that post, which is, to be honest, comical in my
Yeah.
opinion in that way. So we also always should that a little bit down, but what we should tone up is the creativity. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that we try to transport our knowledge and what we want to bring to the people in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe with some memes that we try to
Yeah.
bring into the game, or with some interesting creative ways. And so whatever you do on LinkedIn, whatever you do in these social networks, try to be different. Um, try to be interesting,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and not try to come over it like you're just a facade and nothing more.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great summary of why it's important to provide value in your content to
Exactly.
the community so that they're willing to reciprocate that. And I think that's really important
Yeah.
for the consultant community. when we are in a digital network like LinkedIn. I also liked how you said, be approachable. Don't be,
Exactly.
that expert in the field, because clients see that, other partners see
Yeah.
that. A lot of times we
Yeah.
want to work with people that we're comfortable getting stuck in an airport with in a snowstorm.
Yeah.
Right? We want to be able to have kind of those human, less robot connections. That's why, and I'm just going to build on that. We can tell that your post was written by ChatGPT. Even a very untrained eye can tell that.
Exactly.
A very quick minute. So be authentic, be real, don't be scared to
Exactly.
make mistakes. People correct me and you all the time, right? That's the point of the conversation, so that we can learn from each other. And I think that's the basis of what we're trying to communicate, is get involved in the community, whether you're asking questions in groups, whether you find more of a thought leader or someone in your space like Alexander.
Exactly.
Comment on those posts, ask good questions, and you'll be able to get some guidance and utilize the tool as actually a training platform for your own career.
Exactly.
So I think that's great advice.
Let me add something to that, because
Absolutely.
you said something very important. Be approachable. I think this is the most important thing. Of course, it will get at a certain stage a little bit difficult when you get, let's say, like 80, 90 messages a day. And of course, you have a job, which has having the priority to answer to basically everything. But see this as your personal channel to show the world your best side, what you're able to do, what kind of learnings you have, and so on. And focus on content. Yeah, not really just on, let's say, these kind of stupid one-liners.
Yeah.
And then beautiful picture. I've heard, by the way, recently, that there are actually people who spend each quarter hundreds and hundreds of their own personal money to deliver all the time some nice photos, to be present there on LinkedIn, to pimp up their post with that. Just spend that money maybe on your own education and on your own experience, and then enlighten people, not by a beautiful photo of yourself, but definitely with lessons learned that you did, and that may help others.
Yes, absolutely. That I can't tell you the amount of times in my space, for my company, that we hear in the ERP marketing space that you spent so much of this budget on an SEO strategy and keyword strategy. And a lot of times when we look at traditional marketing tactics, they don't work for managed services. We need a specialized approach, because the relationship and the authenticity and the proven value are core in that message, as well as the relationship. Our buying cycle can be 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. So we need to be able to still harvest that relationship in a digital platform. So I couldn't agree more, with don't spend your money on perfect assets, show up, add value, and that will come. So
absolutely. And I got to add
you
something,
can do it.
one more to that.
Add all the things.
Yeah, because we are again now at that point that we started with let's say, this kind of consultant journey. Like from we have been consultants, and we became a little bit more in that area of executive or technical service, and then we are moving back again to be consultants with an opinion, with guidance and so on, that we want to deliver. When you look, of course, into the technology area itself, and we're not just talking about SAP. SAP is heavily affected by this, what I mean now, but it's not only SAP, all the other companies do that too. We have had this kind of move in, let's say, culture and atmosphere from, if you talk, for example, to 2010, from this kind of engineering driven companies to now sales and marketing driven companies. You heavily see that by you do not even have to work there, but you just see how these companies present themselves. I, for example, have seen that change, for example, when I was at SAP, and from a certain point, it started that marketing documents were not even used for just outside presentation, but also for inside enablements, which in my opinion was like, wow, that's now a little bit different. So it's not the development who's telling you, listen, this is the thing that works again. There we are on top of the game already. In those areas, we are not yet there, but we will be there in 3 months, 6 months period, and so on. Now everything is fine. Now everything is perfect, and so on. And this is, I think, a huge danger, because it means like the bubbles that we are living in, they are getting, with these kinds of messages that we are sending out, stronger and stronger and less transparent to the outside world ever. Which means that if you look, for example, in customer relations, those kind of move to that area has not led to a situation where customers now more easily understand why they should move to S4 or why should they move to that technology. No, the opposite is in my opinion, the feeling. So if there's an advice to give for a consultant and so on, be there in this kind of field where the technology giants have left open to you now, where they have moved away, which is like, be competent, have your own opinion, go to the customer and say like, listen, I take you by the hand and I guide you here and there. I understand your challenges. I'm listening to you and I guide you into a status where you are helped by technology and not by, let's say, very, very colorful presentations now, which are inspirational, but still distant from the customer because they are formulaic and not really individual.
I couldn't agree more. And a lot of times I call it brainwashing, right? It's confusing. It's not clear. And it's so aggressive that you don't understand your why as a business. And that's why you need your consultant or your business advisor to come in and say, like, SAP doesn't tell you your why, right? You need to figure out your why, because there are options. A lot of systems might not want you to believe, and it's not just SAP, it's ERP industry just in general, believe there are options, but there are. And it's absolutely critical, especially for the executive team as business leaders, to effectively assess and own your technology strategy. It cannot be influenced by the noise in the marketplace. And of course, I'm sure SAP listens to me all the time, but if I could advise them, it would be more of make these types of things less flashy, less loud, and more clear. What is the value? The value is there. It's not like they're trying, but it makes it seem that there is no value. So they're trying so hard to fake it, to make it seem like they're actually just controlling the business decision. And that's a huge part about that trust in consultants like yourself, is really making sure, what is your roadmap for technology as a business? Is it moving to SAP S4HANA? Maybe you just got on ECC. There's a lot of people like right, that are like, whoa, like I don't have the resources, the time, money to now go into an S4HANA. So that critical assessment phase. And if you're not familiar with an SAP assessment looks like, definitely go back and watch my episode with Sana Asher, who does the assessment phase. That is absolutely critical for any piece. And you as the consultant, really, that's how you garner that trust, is going through that current state, understanding what are the next steps, and saying, yeah, this marketing is here, but we're really going to make the best decision for you, right? So
absolutely. And the most important thing in that area is to understand first that there is no black and white, but a lot of gray. Because for some customers, a brownfield, maybe even, I'm not a brownfield fan. I'm even accused of being always trying to go bring people to the greenfield, which may not be completely wrong, but there are customers for which a brownfield is the right thing, because if they are on the latest edition, on the latest version, and so on, so a migration is done easily, and if they have done their job right and not modified the system like hell and so on. And then, of course, it can make sense to do that kind of step first, like the technical step first, and then go into, let's say, something of an optimization period. If you look to other customers, who, when they switch on, I have a customer who says, when I switch on my ECC system, it still gets a black and white screen, to illustrate how old it actually is. When you have to do 2 years of work for nothing, just to update or to catch up and update to a level that in the end makes a brownfield possible, then you really should consider of maybe it's a little bit more effective and efficient to start from zero, because it's not like it used to be. But to understand that, you really need people who are able to educate customers. So that means education in that way that we do not throw marketing material at them, because it's training them, but to listen to them, to be able to move from perception to perspective, to be in the mind, in the body of the customer and understand the situation which he or her is in, and then translate this to what is available and to the best possible approach. And by this, of course, psychology is getting more and more important. Empathy is getting more and more important, and especially the ability to question status quo. And this is something which, in my opinion, has been a little bit forgotten in the last years.
I would completely agree. And a lot of times that's kind of the big brother type of fear, right? Of, the Titan that is SAP. But a lot of times we're just having a conversation about how to best utilize their tools. We're not at all saying like we hate SAP, we don't like it. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying we want to match the best technology for SAP to the client so that it will work well. So we don't have a situation in which we've seen this evolution of triage SAP projects because they've been forced in to this migration that they didn't prep for, that they weren't ready for. And now their whole project is full of red because they haven't effectively matched the technology with the customer. And then we look at things like litigation, and then it gets real ugly, real expensive, real quick type of thing. Absolutely.
But the software itself, in most cases, is least guilty of all. Because it's just a tool in the end. Let's not over glorify it. It's just a tool, and it's still a people business to think about, okay, we have now not a hammer anymore, but a drilling machine. What can we do with it? How can we make that use? If you do not go into interaction with your customer, then of course you will take the drilling machine and continue to hammer nails into planks with that. So whenever you hear these kind of cases like, there were some ERP project, they failed and so on, because it's not the problem of the ERP system, it's the problem of the people in the sales process already, then in the approach process, in the approach area, which is my opinion, by the way, the most important part, but also of course in the execution area. And when you look into projects or initiatives that I would not call it fail, because what means failed? Like litigation, or does it already mean like you shift the go live date? Then it's like the Titanic. It's something which went wrong very early, and you went full steam ahead into the iceberg. And that's why I think we definitely have to skill up as consultants, and not just only in the technical way, but in a strategic way, in the way in the how way, like being very, very clear about what generates value in the customer. How do we bring the horsepower to the street where the rubber meets the road? And that's also, I think, where, in my opinion, the largest career possibilities are waiting for people who want to engage in that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more of, really learning that this is still very much a people business, as much as we've seen an evolution of technology and the movement towards things that are more autonomous, like AI, like machine learning. Those are all still tools, as you said. They need a strategic approach in order to be effective, in order to get your return on that technology investment. You still need a strategic leadership approach in order to do that. So I think that's kind of brings us back to those top lessons that you said for consultants: understanding the process work, understanding the architecture of the system, understanding the data. The data is never going away. It's only going to get a bigger, bigger, bigger industry as we move towards this. So making yourself valuable in those conversations is going to be absolutely critical. So Alexander,
Absolutely.
this has been such a great conversation. I've had so much fun. Thank you so much for joining us. If you could leave, this is bite sized, so I always ask at the end for kind of a bite sized piece of advice to further your career in SAP consulting. So, and in per consultants, I tell them one sentence, they never do one sentence. So, what is your bite sized piece of advice for SAP consultants?
I will probably fail
Yeah,
miserably
everyone does.
to keep that to one sentence, so please forgive me. But I think what's very important is to understand two things. The first thing is, like we already approached, when you sign a subscription, for example, for a cloud application, that does not make you actually better. Yeah, it is a tool, and those kinds of horsepower have to be brought to the street. Yeah, that they get traction. That's the first thing, because it's shocking how many people still think, yeah, they have now the solution. Why aren't they better now? Actually, that's the first thing. And the second thing is, when you are working with install-based customers, and when you're talking with them about their legacy processes, so what they do, for example, with ECC. So many consultants do not even go into that kind of sparring and into that kind of challenging. Why do you want to migrate that old stuff? And they do not really engage in discussion, because the customer then says like, it's industry specifics, yeah, or it's the way we have to work, or it's our competitive advantage. If you dig a little bit deeper, yeah, or for example, do a Signavio check where you find out that all the people are working along, not really in that process, and I try to avoid that kind of process. You realize that what the way they work is nothing else than the strategy of 20 years ago implemented with the technology of 20 years ago. So they work like that because there was no other way to implement that process 20 years ago. And still they do not know anything else. To migrate that would mean to bring these kind of narrow guardrails of the old technology into the new world, where these old guardrails do not exist anymore. And to understand this and to be able to support customers to get rid of that, I think that's one of the major benefits and one of the major values a consultant can deliver. And if you're good in that, you really can make a difference. And the difference mean not just for customers, but also personally for your own career.
Absolutely. So well said. And definitely lots of pieces of advice in this episode. So I definitely recommend, giving it a watch again, or even downloading the transcription. A lot of people don't know you can do that, but on YouTube or any audio platform that you're watching on, it's a great piece to kind of just look through and make some notes, especially if you're using it as a tool to further your career. So Alexander, I deeply appreciate you kind of sharing these insights. You've had a wildly successful career. And if our audience wants to get in touch with you, has questions, or wants to follow you, where can they find you?
Yeah, probably the best thing would be on my LinkedIn page. I think I'm fine there. I'm found easily. Just enter Alexander Greb, Greb, and then engage with me. Tell me where I'm right and where I'm wrong. Really looking forward.
Yeah, the king of memes, the king of SAP memes. Every time you pop my feed, I literally LOL. So definitely great content there. Well, thank you to Alexander, and thank you to the audience for joining us today. Just a reminder, this is bite-sized. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. We put out new episodes each week. I always want to hear from you guys to make your episodes most valuable. So if you have ideas about content, feel free to pop them in the comments wherever you're watching or listening to this episode today, or find me at Kyler Cheatham on LinkedIn as well. You can always DM me if you have ideas or things that you want to hear about. Also, if you are in the SAP consultant space, you want to network, feel free to shoot me a message. I can do some introductions. I do that all the time. Happy to do that for you as well. So thank you to you, Alexander, and thank you to our audience, and we'll see you next time.